the things we will not do today is actual training. And apart from Richard, everybody else has had presumably the Heading for Extinction training. So I feel like that part isn't necessary for you. Richard, there will be others, for example, Beth herself and perhaps others who have not had that training. So what I will do separately is organize a training session where you will have an opportunity to practice aspects of the talk and get feedback on that practice from the team and myself. So we haven't got a date for that yet because I don't know who and how many people want to or need to do that bit of training. But I would certainly encourage you to join that, and we will make sure that it's at a time that's suitable for you. So is that okay for everybody? Amazing. Before I share my screen, then, I would like to tell you a bit about what this talk is and how is it different to Heading for Extinction. So, and Ned, I think you've probably heard this bit today already once because we were speaking with Pathways, who also wanted a brief introduction to the talk today. So apologies if I'm repeating myself there. So Heading for Extinction, as you will be aware, was a talk that was the seminal or inaugural talk for Extinction Rebellion. It was being delivered by Gail and Roger in the very earliest days, and it was designed to sound the alarm and to be quite shocking and quite depressing, and it was that. And so, the first half was basically, if you think we're in deep shit, you don't know the half of it. There's a lot more to it, and it's worse than you thought, and it's unimaginably terrifying. And the second half was, okay, so Heading for Extinction, that's the first half, and what to do about it is the second half. And the second half was mainly in the initial phases, it was mainly join Extinction Rebellion. So it was much of it, and I think there was like 90 slides of the stuff. It was very, very long. And much of it was science education so that people understood what the hell is going on. And it worked in the sense that it opened eyes and it helped with awareness, and over time, it slowly graduated into what I would call a recruitment talk. So we started dialing back on the science because we felt that there was enough out there, people were aware, and especially the people who would show up to a talk like this were kind of aware anyway. They didn't need to be told as much. They needed to be told that it's perhaps worse than you think, but we took the science down a notch. We kept updating it, but we added some theory of change, a bit of sociology, a bit of and a lot more Extinction Rebellion. So more about us, more about explaining what we do and how you can get involved, that sort of thing. And so I think the second phase of the talk was let's use this to recruit rather than to sound the alarm. And about a year and a half ago, I think maybe even possibly as much as almost 2 years ago now, we came to the conclusion that that has run its course as well. Yes, there are, as we've heard in Pathways, there are still new recruits every week, 50 new recruits to Extinction Rebellion every single week, which is great. But most of the people who were going to be, so to speak, converted on the basis of a talk like this were already activists, so either with Extinction Rebellion or otherwise. So there were diminishing returns on the recruitment aspect of it because all the people that showed up to the talk were typically already recruited. 80 to 90% of the people were XR. They just wanted to know what's new in the talk. They wanted to get a boost of energy or something like that. And so it wasn't really delivering additional recruits. And it also, we thought that sounding the alarm was kind of complete now. So we needed the talk to pivot. And rather than trying to revamp the existing talk, we decided to start with a fresh new look and a blank canvas, completely blank canvas. So we thought, okay, this was quite terrifying and doomist. what can we do? Who are we talking to? So the first question is, who is the audience? The audience is not activists, or also not the activist type who is ripe for the converting. The target audience is the next layer out. If the activist is in the middle, next layer out, people who are concerned citizens want to do something about it. But if you said, hey, the best thing you can do is be an activist, they might be switched off by that. So we needed something that doesn't switch them off. Also, we know that that the terrifying news can be paralyzing, and we want the opposite of paralyzing. We want to galvanize. We want to incite action in any form, really. So we decided that that being the target audience, we need to focus on hope. We need to focus on something that they can sign up to, something that they can want, something that feels desirable rather than terrifying. And so the world we want is a sense of, okay, we're in deep trouble. We all know this, but there is still a world that's worth living in, that's worth fighting for, and therefore something that I can do. So the new talk is basically structured into 3 sections. Section 1, the world we want. We can still have a world that's worth wanting and worth fighting for. Section 2, here are the barriers that stand in our way, which harks back a bit to heading for extinction, but nowhere near as depressing as that. And then section 3 is the tangible, action-oriented section where we say, okay, here's all the things that you can start doing today. It'll make you feel better. It'll make your local community better, and you're adding to the overall mix of solutions. Of which one will be activism, of course. That's one of the big things. That's the structure. And if I can just mention one last bit before we go into the actual deck, is the adoption ladder. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this marketing term, the adoption ladder, from awareness all the way up to advocacy. And there's steps in between. Once you're aware, you can be interested, then you experience desire. This is based in the idea of buying a product. And we have to recognize that XR, in this sense, is a product, or activism generally is a product, and you want people to adopt into this product. You have to take a stepwise approach. You cannot walk before you run. So the people who show up at a talk like this will be aware. So we don't need to do that. They're aware. They're probably interested. That's great. We need to nudge them one step up the adoption ladder to desire, then to action, then repeated action and advocacy. So the people here sitting in this room, we're advocates. We're going to advocate for climate action. That's what a speaker does. We are at the end of the adoption ladder. But what we need to bear in mind when we give these talks is everybody's at a different level. And the people we're speaking to, being concerned citizens, but not the activist type, are at a lower level on that adoption ladder. We need to move them one step up. So hopefully that's what the talk does, is it nudges people on the adoption ladder. And we have succeeded. If we don't need to convert everybody to XR, we just need to move them up one step on the adoption ladder. That's how I would define success for the talk and for you when you deliver it. I am opening the talk, which actually was open on my screen. There we are. But before I start sharing, I just want to stop for a second and take stock. How is everybody doing? And do you have any thoughts or questions at this point? Richard is happy. John is happy. Christine?
Happy.
Any comments?
No. Is one step enough is my only thought.
Oh, here comes Eric. Is one step enough?
Yeah, I mean, you say the target is to move people up one step on this ladder.
Yeah, on that night.
On that night, yeah.
That night. Because, hello, Eric. We've just done the first introductory section. So just to, Christine, it's unrealistic for you to expect to be able to move them 2 steps.
Okay.
Might happen. And you don't know who's in the audience, because sometimes There's somebody in there who just needs that last little nudge to sign up to XR, to sign up to be an activist, and they just wanted to hear it one last time. Um, Great. That's one step for them. For everybody else, the one step may be sign up to the newsletter, or the one step maybe talk to my neighbor,
Yeah.
or yeah, it'll be different for everyone. So, as a general rule, everything is in the notes. The visuals hopefully have as little text on them as humanly possible. Sometimes there's a few words or even a sentence or two, but mainly it's images that evoke a feeling, and the words are conveyed by the speaker. It's really easy to do if you're on Zoom because you've got your presenter notes in front of you at all times and you just need to speak them more or less, although we always obviously encourage you to use your own words and not slavishly read what's on the presenter notes, which makes it a very boring presentation. But if you're presenting live, then you need to be on top of your brief because you won't be able to read your material off the slides. They just don't exist on the slides. So this is the world we want. This is completely optional, but I usually show up to talks dressed like this. This is just normal day attire for me. And I show up like this and I start talking and people have an impression of me. And then I say, would you rather be receiving messages from this guy or from this guy who is the same guy, just in full riot gear? And it's an interesting it's an interesting little exercise in stereotypes, which I like to call out because I like to bust some myths about activism and activists. Just because I'm dressed in that way, I am still a climate science graduate who is well suited to speak to them. So once I do that, again, you don't need to do this. It's just something I found a bit of fun and a bit of icebreaker. We go into an introduction slide. This is where we talk about, yes, there is a world worth living in, there's a world worth fighting for. It hangs in the balance, but we all can do something and we can multiply our impact. And at this point, I usually say there's going to be 8 or 9 different concepts and thoughts and ideas that I'd like to speak about today. And you'll find at least one of them, hopefully, new to you and useful to you. Impact multipliers is the first one of those. Then we mentioned the structure of the talk. I'm using a fidget toy here, by the way, which is an Extinction Rebellion pin. It's my little ADHD fidget toy. So what's in the talk? First of all, we talk about planetary boundaries and human needs and how those two fit together, or do they? Then we talk immediately at the beginning is, okay, what is the world that we want? What kind of world is worth living in? What should we be aiming for? And then we talk about how come we don't have that and where are we heading instead? This is the shortest bit. This is the heading for extinction bit in the middle. And then typically there's a break. If it's a live session, I would do a break here because at that point we will have talked for about 40 minutes. It's great to have a 15-minute chat, relax, have a biscuit and a tea. And then we come back to the second bit, which is the whole second bit is what do we do? How do we get the world that we want? And of course, there's plenty of space for discussion at the end. I would say that the whole session is ideally 2 hours. You could do it in an hour and a half. I did it in 40 minutes, which meant I had to cut out a number of slides. You can do that. The one thing I wouldn't do is add slides to it. So if you need to edit it, pare it down, I would say that's within the remit of T3 talk speaker. And here we have Nell. Hello, Nell. Nell, would you like to come on camera and wave hello? Ned, do we know who Nell is?
I just sent an email out just reminding people that if they didn't have the Zoom link. So I presume Nell just got that one.
Okay.
But I'll ask Nell to unmute.
I tried that.
Okay. I mean, as in, I've just pressed the button.
Yes.
Oh, you did
Yeah.
that as well. Okay.
You are master of Zoom, Ned, but I am coming up the learning curve. So watch your back. So okay, well, unless and until Ned wants to wave hello to us, we will carry on. Um, and so the second half is oh yeah, so we're talking about the 2 hour session, ideally 2 hour session when it's live, which will mean probably a bit, at least half an hour of that is going to be in discussions and sessions, workshopping. You'll have a 15-minute break, and the net speaking time, I would say, is an hour and 15 minutes. You can squeeze it into an hour, but it feels rushed when you do that. I've done it 6 times now, 7 times, and I can just about get it in under an hour, but it means very, very snappy. Then, once we've done contents page, we go, let's immediately engage the audience. We're going to ask them a question about where they sit on this normal curve. We can talk about the fact that there's a small minority of people who are still climate skeptics. There's a minority of people who are actually climate activists, and most people sit somewhere in the middle, in between that. And then you just ask, okay, hands up in the air. Which one are you? Are you green? Are you yellow? Which bit? And if it ever comes up in conversation, it's a really nice one to refer back to and say, who are the people we don't need to talk to? It's down these people. So most people in the room with you will be either green or the first bar of yellow. Is this orange? Orange. And our job is to talk to the next layer down, and our job is not to talk to anybody else. So I do get a lot of questions around, how do I talk to a climate denier? And the answer is, you don't. It's as simple as that. We don't need to. They might be noisy, but they're the minority opinion, and we don't need to convince them. We won't, so don't. I sometimes do it just for fun, just to practice my skills, but it's not something that we need to engage with. So that's nice to have a read of the room. You'll have a better idea of who is in front of you in the audience once you've done this, and it doesn't need to take more than 30 seconds. You can do it quickly, or you can have a conversation about it. Then we talk about planetary boundaries. So this is donut economics. We can reference the credit for Kate Raworth if we want to, but donut economics basically. And by the way, everything is nicely laid out in presenter notes. So you have all that you need in there. It's the ecological ceiling of the planet. It's chemistry and physics. And then the social foundation, which is everything we need, people need for what I would call the good life. And there's the donut in the middle, which respects the ecological ceiling, but at the same time meets people's needs. And the proposition here is that we can live within our means as well as meet people's needs. And there's a safe and just space for humanity in that donut. Which leads us nicely into the next bit, which is that we can make this work on this planet here. It is possible. We can have happy and fulfilling lives. We can have, all of us can. And we need to change the way in which we measure success and change the way we think about our goals. And we talk quite a lot about this. This gets repeated. It's in the spirit of tell them. The change from gross domestic product to gross national happiness on the national level or global level, and on the individual level, that's changing from standard of living to quality of life. Standard of living being your energy signature. How much energy do you use to do the things that you do, as opposed to quality of life, which kind of translates to happiness. And we have to change these measurements. We have to change our aspirations. And if we did that, that would enable everybody else around the world to also have high quality of life, even while we have a low environmental footprint. In order to get the world we want, we need two things. Number one, a clear goal, where are we going? And number two, a roadmap of how to get there. If we don't have a map and we don't have a clear goal, we're never going to get there. And that brings to mind this, it's not actually a quote, to be honest. It's not perfectly a quote. So, yeah, where should I go, says Alice. Now, that depends on where you want to end up, says the Cheshire Cat. It's not an exact quote, but it fits the purpose. So, in that spirit, we want to talk about where we want to end up so that we can then lay a roadmap for how to get there. So, what might it feel like? And so this is a general slide about what might the world we want feel like. And we don't want to prejudge what people want for their own world that they want. That's on the next slide. That's a bit of a workshop. But the general gist of it is that we need to change the way we think about the economy, and we treat it as an ecosystem. We need to reimagine the human condition as a part of nature rather than apart from nature. And again, GDP measures need to be replaced by planetary health, human well-being. And there's some few generalized ideas of what the world we want might look like. It's cleaner, it's greener, it's communal, it's less unfair, less greedy, less selfish, slower, less hurried, and sustainable by design. And then with that, that's a little taster session, and we go into this blank canvas page, which is audience participation. So you go, okay, well, I'm sure you all have some idea of how you would like to live your life in a way that enables everybody else to live their life happily. So let's have a conversation about that. You can have pairs or small groups discussing together for a few minutes, and then you ask for the audience to present back some of their thoughts to the plenary session. How would it look like? How would it be better than what it is today? How would it feel to live in that world? What are the most important changes to the current world to getting the world that we want? It's a fun, buzzy atmosphere, lots of talking, great ideas coming out, which you will acknowledge and then move on to the next bit. And the next bit is a specific case, and that's your case. So what we have here is not an individual case, it's a case of the world I want, which is the product of our team's conversations. So it sounds a lot like the world I personally would want, but it's not my individual idea of the world I want. It's an idea that we came up with together. I would encourage you to use as much as possible from this. This makes a lot of sense, but we have to emphasize that everybody's individual worlds that they want might look and sound quite different. The key points here are that I will be a happier, more centered, less anxious, more connected, more embedded, more resilient person that I am today. I will be a better version of myself, basically. Why would I worry less? Because I will have fewer bills to pay or lower bills to pay. I will have local community clean power, clean, affordable commutes, healthy eating with a balanced diet, but with a low or no meat diet, with meat replacements available and affordable, with a strong local community, with people helping each other out. I'm sure all of these sentiments, resonate with you guys being who you are, and you might not, not everybody wants to work on an allotment, and that's fine. You don't necessarily identify with this visual, but you'll all have similar sorts of feelings of needing a community, needing resilience, having a decent quality of life whilst allowing everybody else to stay alive as well. By the way, please do stop me at any point if you have a comment or a thought that you'd like to share. So it's less of a monologue. But then comes the bad news. Okay, that's the world we want. Great, fine. However, we can't just ask for it and expect it to be delivered to our doorstep. If we don't solve our own problems, no one's coming to save us. No one's going to come and solve our problems. This is the first prompt, I suppose, in inviting the audience to think about taking action, because it's one thing to want a nice world, and that's great, but who's going to do that? My mother-in-law and I had this conversation the other day, and she was like, I'm not going to care about these global issues because, and she's from Transylvania, because nobody cares about the fact that there's massive deforestation in Transylvania, and they're just stealing the trees wholesale and exporting it to all sorts of other countries. And she's very worked up about that, and she wants the EU to intervene, and she wants more attention to it, and she thinks nobody cares. And so I said to her, "Yeah, that's great, and I agree with you. It's terrible thing. What have you done to advocate for that? What have you? Who did you speak to, or what action did you take?" And the conversation ended there because she didn't do anything about it. She was just upset about it. And I said, maybe you should go and do something. It'll make you feel better because you're taking action, but also it might just help. And that got her thinking, for sure. I mean, she's nowhere near the activist type, but at least the complaint stopped, which is a good first step. So yeah, we need to solve our own problems, and we can. The next two slides are about technological solutions which exist. So it is technologically possible to save ourselves. And it is also socially possible to save ourselves. We have everything we need and more, and we can all come together and work together on these solutions. There's more detail here, but there is one particular point that I'd like to highlight, which is the fact that people are already working on this. So the social solutions are already in motion. We are an example of that. But also there are climate emergency centers being set up. There's already 30 of them running in the UK and 20 more on the way at the time of writing. I'm sure that's going to be more. So that those are things that people can already join. They don't need to come up with. That's something we talk about later on when we talk about the ecosystem of various different environmental organizations. Nobody needs to invent anything. It's all there for the joining. So it is socially possible, it is technologically possible, but we're not heading in the right direction. We all know this. These are some images from Valencia, 2024, Germany 2022, Greece 2023, Pakistan 2024, wildfires, floods, and all the rest of it. So we are heading in the wrong direction. And coming back to the donut economics, we can see that our current performance is really poor. The planetary health is poor, and the meeting of the social foundations is also poor. So we're both depleting and exceeding our ecological ceiling, whilst at the same time not meeting the needs of the people around the planet. So we're saying that the green donut is possible, but we're currently at the red donut. And we can, at this point, you can, but you don't need to go into any elaborate detail about what these individual cells are: land conversion, freshwater, biodiversity, etc. And then in the social foundations, the social equality, peace and justice, income, education, health, food, water, etc. You can talk around that, but what I usually say is you guys don't need to, the audience doesn't need to read into the small print here. All we're saying here is that it's generally speaking not going in the right direction. And if we carry on like this, then we are heading for self-destruction. Is it the case that the human species will go extinct? Probably not, although there is a non-negligible percentage chance of that as well. But even if it doesn't, will countless millions or billions suffer immeasurably and or die? Probably, almost certainly. So that is the inevitable trend if we don't change our ways. And this is one of the heading for extinction messages. There is change. Change is happening, but it's not happening fast enough. And there is no planet B. And I always also mention that, yes, the billionaires are also going to experience that there is no planet B. Much as they try to get off this planet, they're not going to. And we're all in this together, really. And then we have just 3 slides on the climate consequences on land. 2024 may have been the hottest year on record, but it is also going to be the coolest, or one of the coolest years that we experience going forward. And the consequences are obvious: floods, wildfires, droughts, all sorts of environmental catastrophes happening, extreme weathers, extreme temperatures, all made worse by climate change. And then the second one is C. I like to say here that this is the thing that these are the points that you're less likely to notice because you don't live in or on the sea, but there are at least 7 different things going wrong in the sea. Sea level rise, seawater temperature rise, sea ice melt, ocean acidification, eutrophication, coral bleaching, sea plastic, that's 9, overfishing, bottom trawling. Every single one of these is a catastrophe in itself. And there's multiple different things going on, and we need to be aware of that. So, and I kind of leave it there. There's a lot of notes here, but that's all we need to say, really. And then lastly, the UK is not exempt or not immune from all of this stuff either. So we are both experiencing more severe extreme rainfall and therefore floods, but also more droughts. And there are drought hotspots and flood hotspots all over the UK. I was tempted to put in a figure here, like a visual. There's like 200 flood hotspots across the UK. So the UK is looking just as bad as everywhere else. We're trending with the rest of the world on climate change. We have poor biodiversity, high levels of water pollution, air pollution, all of those things preventable, and all of those things created by humans. And if that weren't enough, we've got the climate tipping points and feedback loops, which I don't know how familiar you are with these, but they are not well factored into the climate models. So the models tell us bad things, but if these tipping points happen, then it's going to get extremely worse. We could lose control of the planetary climate within the next 10 years to a point of no return and hothouse Earth, as you will probably be aware. And there's a few examples here on the next slide of the types of tipping points that we experience. And you can see that they're global, they're everywhere. Some are more imminent, others take more time to kick in, but they all have an impact on each other. If you'd like to, there we go. So the more these happen, the more they happen. And you can highlight, I usually pick the one that's most emotive to me, which is the Amazon rainforest dieback, which we might be the last generation of people who see the Amazon rainforest as a rainforest, might turn into a savanna. And once it does that, it is irreversible on the human time scale. It might never reverse, or it might reverse in tens or hundreds of thousands of years. So this is a slide that if you don't feel very comfortable with, I think because we talk about tipping points on the previous slide, it's okay to skip this slide if you're short of time or if you don't want to go into this much detail. It depends on your audience as well. And then, because Ned was demanding it, we do also have these slides on biodiversity. So this is talking about a million plant and animal species being at the risk of extinction in the coming decades, and that we need robust, stable, diverse ecosystems for humanity to thrive on the planet. We are in the 6th mass extinction event. We can mention this to people who don't know Extinction Rebellion, that in fact, this is where Extinction Rebellion's name comes from. Rather than human extinction, it's the extinction of species. And there are some more notes here on what kind of issues we're dealing with. And this is a short slide just to drive home the point that ecosystems are not a nice to have. Without healthy ecosystems, humans cannot survive on this planet. By the way, every single statement that's on here in this deck is peer-reviewed science, fact-checked and accurate. So if someone says, well, we could, it wouldn't be as nice, but we could, you can say, no, actually, we couldn't. And there's a fact check document which was compiled by Martin, our science editor, which is, but there's a QR code at the end of the talk, so you can guide people who want to ask these kinds of questions straight to that document where it's all explained in detail. There. So that was the bit from heading for extinction. Basically, these maybe 10 slides? Yeah, 11 slides in total. And we go to a bit of the politics of it. I'm going to stop here again and check in with you. How are we doing? Good? All like Carol? Carol, you're...
Yeah, I am a bit disappointed we don't have any of the graphs because I felt some of them were very powerful.
Yes, I like them too. As a climate scientist, I was advocating for those graphs, trust me.
Yeah.
I love them.
Especially the ones that do the long-term time scales and show how, it just blows any doubts out of the water when you see the
squiggly lines. I know which one.
Well, yeah, when you see when did we start burning fossil fuel and how much, and when did we start warming the planet? It's just
so clear.
It's so clear. Yeah. Anyway, there you go.
Well, Carol, what I will say to you though is, depending on your audience, you might choose to pick that slide up from Heading for Extinction and stick it in this deck. You have every right to do that if you'd like. And Marilyn.
Yes, I was just thinking about the hockey stick graph, which is very powerful.
That's the one.
And it's quite nice. It's quite a nice visual aid for talking about what's happening. And, especially when it shows all the COPs and how, fossil fuel use just continues to rise.
Yes.
Yeah. But as you say, you are allowed to put one of those in, are you?
I think you are. You're more than welcome to do that.
Is there an up-to-date version of it somewhere?
The latest version of Heading for Extinction is a couple of years out of date.
Yeah.
It didn't change much. It's the same trend.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But it's 6 point something. I'm happy to share that with you, but it's not going to be much different to what you probably have from before. Thank you. So we go into a bit of, I guess you could call it politics, but only just a few slides of it, 4 in total. So we don't have the world we want. It's looking really shit. Why do we think that is? And there's a broken system that is preventing us from having the world that we all want and need and deserve, which is manifest as unrestricted, unfettered capitalism, when the only force that matters is the market. But the market should and can work for us rather than we working for it. So it needs to be the other way around. And it's almost a tautology that unrestricted growth is unsustainable. It can only lead to collapse, because sustainability in its essence, all it means is you can carry on doing what you're doing indefinitely without collapse. And if you carry on doing what we're doing now, there's a clear path to collapse in the very short to medium term, because we only have one planet and we're already using almost 2 planets worth of resources. So we're depleting the planet very rapidly. And so the point I like to make here is unrestricted growth is going to meet and is already meeting the brick wall of planetary physics. And when it comes down between physics and economics, physics wins every single time. You can't economics your way out of physics. So why is it? We've had this agreement. We've got the Paris Agreement. Every bloody country, 196 states, including the European Union separately, with the exception of 3, states of Iran, Libya, and Yemen, agreed the Paris Agreement, and we agreed 2.0, but ideally 1.5. And the reason is because we know now from science that 1.5 is the only. It's not great, 1.5. It's already pretty crap, but we must not exceed 2.0 because that is a disaster. And Currently, the modeling suggests that if we continue doing what we're planning to do, we will get up to 2.8. And we know that states are pretty bad at meeting their obligations. So that's based on obligations alone. And if the implementation doesn't go as planned, then we are on track for 3 degrees or more by the year 2100. And of course, at the end of the century, history doesn't stop. The world will continue, and the warming will continue after 2100 as well. We might not be around to see it, but it's not going to stop at the end of the century. So, fine. Who is it that is stopping us from achieving the world that we want? And I'm not a person to do finger pointing, but it is they. It's most unequivocally not us. It's not even the top 1%. It's the top 0.01%. It's the mega rich, the mega polluters, their lobbying infrastructure, the media that they have captured, the governments that they have captured. And this is not an even fight. They're very well organized. They have a budget that we here around this table cannot imagine. We can't imagine it. There's just, the dollar bills line up to the moon and back, no problem. 300,000 miles worth of dollar bills is not a problem for them. And so there's this ladder that we go down. First, they said there is no climate change, of course. The climate denial is no longer in fashion. We now have climate delayism, and climate realism is the new one. So then they said we weren't the cause of it. Then they said that's okay because it's going to be good for us. Oh, CO2 is plant food, right? Then they told us, don't worry about it. We'll fix it. You don't need to think about it. Then they said, well, fixing it is going to be a problem because it's super expensive, not considering the alternative, how expensive that might be. And of course, they're also telling us you're too small to make a change, so don't bother trying because you can't. And very soon, already now, they're saying it's too late to do anything about it, so we may as well not try. And we've seen with the Trump administration, you give an inch, they take a mile. As soon as they can, they slide back down that scale, all the way down to Trump saying, only yesterday, that climate change is the worst hoax, which he has been saying, to be fair to him, for the past 15 years. It's the same trope every time. So we are being stopped, but we must not allow ourselves to be stopped, and we can. And this is where the hopeful message starts to come back. This is the turning point, I guess, in the talk, where you say, yes, all that's true. That's a problem. It's fucked up. It really is badly fucked up. But we can cancel the apocalypse. There is a positive vision that's possible. And this is a moment for you to get emotional. You can say things like, I'm so tired of being sad about the future. I'm tired of being ashamed of my species. We can do better than this. And it's up to us. And this is the talk that will tell us what we can do to make meaningful change, both as an individual and as a community. So we're starting to go into the solutions section. And we talk about, okay, what are the big things that we need to do? These are the biggest things. We know what to do. It's not a crisis of knowledge. It's a crisis of politics and willpower. We need to stop burning stuff. We need to hand back space to nature. We need to change our food system. And if we did that, we would almost automatically hand back space to nature. And it's important, perhaps, and it will come up in questions or not, but we as XR, we are not in the business of telling people what they want to eat, what they need to eat. We're not here to advocate for veganism or vegetarianism. But when we come to the section where we talk about individual actions, we will say meat as a treat. If you don't want to be a vegetarian, fine. But if you think back 100 years, people didn't have meat every day. They had meat once a week. I also play a game at some point, sometimes over here, is to say, how many kilos of meat do you think an average American consumes in a year? And let the audience take some guesses. Do you guys want to take some guesses? Be my audience for a second. Go on, Marilyn. You know you want to. Carol?
It's a frightening question.
How many
Because
kilos of meat
they
do you
eat so much flipping meat.
Yeah,
I-
the average American.
Okay, I'm going to say 100 kilos.
Okay,
I was going to say 50.
50, 100. Any other guesses?
I was say 250.
250. Wow. Okay.
Whoa.
Well, Carol, it's 120. And how about the UK?
75.
75. Any other guesses, John?
Yeah, I'd go with 75.
75.
I'll go with 70.
Okay. Well, it used to be 57 when I first started talking about it, but because there's been an annual reduction of about 10-15% in the UK in meat eating habits, we're now in the low 50s.
Oh,
Good.
Okay. And so this is a point I make not on this slide, but on the other one when we talk about mitigation and individual actions, is to say if you've considered reducing your meat consumption, you're not alone. This country is reducing its meat consumption, and you're joining a group of millions of people who are eating less meat year on year. What about India?
Oh, 20.
Okay,
I'd say 10.
10,
Yeah, I'd say 10.
and 10. It's 4.
Whoa.
So, well, there's a lot of vegan and vegetarian Indians, obviously. And I'm not suggesting that we adopted an Indian diet, but what I am suggesting is you don't need 120, you don't even need 50. You can eat a lot less meat and have a decent quality of life. So that's a big chunk of what we need to do, is basically eliminate animal agriculture as much as possible. Or if you do 80%, that's great. If you reduce beef primarily, there's a slide in here which I will show you at the end, which I sometimes use when in the question and answer sessions. It's not part of the actual talk, but it's really useful for people who want to know, well, how do I modify my diet? Anyway, so those are the 3 big things that we need to do. We know we need to do them. We just need to get down to doing them. And obviously, before we go to individual actions, we need to stress that governments, international organizations, and global corporations need to do their bit. Carol, you have a question or a point?
Yeah, I know it's a really unpopular thing for me to say, but when I was born, there were 3.3 billion people on the planet,
Yes.
and now there are 8 billion people on the
Yes.
planet. If we had stayed at 3.3 billion or gone down to 1 billion, we would not be in this pickle. And I know it's about the wealthiest people burning huge amounts, orders of magnitude more than other people. And I know that's why we don't talk about it. But I do think it's an elephant in the room that we never
Address. So yeah. And this takes us a bit further away, but I'm happy to discuss it briefly because you might get it as a question. So the carbon footprint of the lowest emitting 1.5 billion, people is the same as it. So yes, of course. Where shall I start? The real problem is that the rest of the top 1 billion or top 1.5 billion people are responsible for 80% of the emissions. However, the rest of the world also wants to have the same level of standard of living as the 1.5 billion. So who are we? We're not in the position to tell them, no, you can't have that because we've already had 200 years of that and now it's too late. You're going to have to stay in your lane or get cancelled. Your carbon footprint is 2 tons per year. My carbon footprint is 11 tons per year. I'm going to continue doing that, but at the expense of you. So there has to be global climate justice, which means we need to. Oh dear, I can't pick that up just now. We need to reduce drastically our footprint, but we also need to make sure that other people around the globe don't increase it, and therefore that leads into conversations about technological transfer and funding and all the rest of it.
But the thing that I understand all of that, and I agree with all of that, and it's only one part of the problem, as we know, because the other part is the biodiversity, it's the cutting down the trees, it's taking up more space, it's eating more food. Like 8 billion people all need to eat.
Yes.
8 billion people all need to heat themselves and cook, and I don't know, maybe it's not helpful because the people in the room aren't going to suddenly decide to not have children, but that's what I decided in the end. I decided the people in the room were unlikely to be able to do anything about it.
That's okay, but even then, eating and heating are, every individual will always have a carbon footprint. There's no way, no getting around that, because we are an internal combustion engine and we emit CO2 just by existing. So Carol, the amount, like for example, if we take Africa as an example where carbon footprints are low, but deforestation is high, and there's a high level of usage, for example, of wood and coal for cooking and heating. There's such an abundance of solar energy, we could very easily convert all of the cooking and heating in Africa to solar, not even electric, just solar, these solar stoves that don't use any photovoltaics. It's just based on heat. So in theory, at a significantly respectable quality of life, this planet can sustain 10 billion people without breaking the planet. We can sustainably live on this planet, 10 billion of us. We won't do that. I don't think we'll ever get to 10 billion. That's my personal view. My specialty is climate migration, by the way. That's the intersection between sociology and climate science, and that's my thesis is on climate migration. So I have certain firm beliefs around how we're going to have to murder each other in large numbers before this all plays out. And also fertility rates are going to drop right through the floor, so that we won't reach the 10 billion. But the fastest growing population is actually in Africa by a long margin, where it's the lowest or barely negligible carbon footprint. So yes, you're absolutely right. The 8 billion of us have a much bigger carbon footprint than we did back in the 50s or whatever, when we were 1 or 2 billion. But actually, that change of carbon footprints is mostly the top consumers and polluters. It's not the people who are in vast numbers, but the people who are in small numbers. But we here in the UK consume a lot more than we did back then. That's because we have a higher standard of living rather than a higher quality of life. I would argue we have a worse quality of life. Let's move on from that, if that's okay. Thank you. I would advise everyone, by the way, there's a YouTube video which recently came out, and Al Gore is talking. It's a very fresh, in the recent days. It came out probably a few days ago. And it's only about 25 minutes, I think, maybe half an hour. And he talks about climate realists, and he has some amazing, such a good speaker. And he's got the best figures. If you want good figures, quotable figures, right there. Just listen to that talk and extract what you need. You've got everything you need in there. So before we talk about individual action and what we need to do, we need to talk about governments. And governments are, they need to change the system of rewards. And that is a simple, very compact way of saying it. They need to change the system of rewards in the energy systems, the food systems, the manufacturing systems, and the ecosystems, which means we need to reward, subsidize, incentivize, invest in, pay for the right behaviors, for example, allowing trees to stand rather than be cut down. And we need to disincentivize, tax, restrict, ban the wrong behaviors, for example, just as an example with agricultural subsidies. We shouldn't be subsidizing destructive agricultural practices. There's a lot of examples which I've listed here. There is more, but this should be more than enough. There's the further notes is more if you want more. But subsidizing, so fossil fuel subsidies, taking that away from fossil fuels, putting that on the renewables, it costs nothing. You're just shifting money from one place to the other. Of course, it costs political capital. Cheap and clean public transport does cost money, but we need to invest in that. Subsidies to home retrofitting, revamping energy grids. There's a lot of things that we as individuals cannot do. These are big items or legislative items that governments need to do. Hello again. Come in and speak to me. Sorry, guys, just 1 second. Yes. Oh, he just called. Can you please call him? I think he might be late. Yeah. Cheers. So governments need to be on top of it, and I guess this is one good place to ask the question: whose government is this? Who's going to do this? If it's our government, then they should act on our behalf. If they're acting on behalf of the fossil fuel interests, then they're not our governments, and if they're not our governments, then we need to they've been captured, and we need to recapture these governments. So we come to democracy in just on the next slide, but yeah, why don't I talk about that there? So this slide is saying, tinkering around the edges is not going to do it. Think intergalactic size, think big change, think everything needs to change from how the way democracy works from the bottom up. Think about overhauling completely our energy system. Think about how we change our market forces and our economy. Think about the way we use and abuse the planet's resources or recognize it for the living organism that it is. It means we don't own the place, we look after the place. And that's a mindset shift, which we need to get used to, because I think we got used to the idea that we are over here, that's a thing over there, we own this, and we do whatever the hell we want with it. We can use it as an endless source of materials and resources, and we can use it as an endless sink for the waste that we produce. So because it's so big, because it's intergalactic in size, you cannot be expected to achieve everything by yourself. But there are things that we can do towards it, and that work has already started in various different communities. And you can join that work. We need to act locally. This has been around, this bloody phrase, act local, think global, act local, has been around forever. But it is so true that you have to, because change is noticeable on the local level. The things that happen to you on your street, in your community, you notice that. But if everybody does that, then that will lead to change. And eyes on the prize, eyes on the big picture. And that leads us into what can we do? We, the people. This is where the actions, the personal actions and the community actions come into play. I'm going to stop again for a second and check in with you guys. Anybody want to comment on anything or have a thought? How am I doing with keeping your attention? Christine.
Yeah. Are you intending that we just we talk all these things through, we don't stop for group discussions or tiny breakout rooms or whatever?
Yes. So the break, I usually do the break here. We can cancel the apocalypse. That's where the break is. And I'm sorry that I didn't mention that before. So you get to slide 29. There's a bit of audience participation right at the beginning. And then there's the audience participation at slide 10. So you will have had some conversations with the people in the room twice, and then you stop here at we cancel the apocalypse. You join, if it's a Zoom call, you can have a chat. If it's face-to-face, then you'll definitely walk around and have conversations with people up to there. And from there is this section. The next time that there's audience participation is on slide 41.
Okay.
So there's a bit of stuff to get through. If you at any point, like I did with you just now with the meat eating, right? That's a nice way to break it up. You can stop and have a chat about that or any other topic that suits your fancy. But it is a talk in the end, Christine.
Yeah, okay.
If it's a workshop, you're not going to get your points across.
No.
All right, so what can we do? And before we talk about the specific actions, it is important to recognize the need for action. So you know that rights aren't freely given. The right to a 5-day working week, the right to vote, the right to travel on the right part of the bus, the right to gay marriage, all of these things are rights that were hard fought for. And if we didn't have the trade unions, we wouldn't have some of these rights. And if we didn't have the suffragettes, we wouldn't have these rights. And these people were, in their own time, perhaps considered as criminal and persecuted and prosecuted. And now, of course, they're on the right side of history. And who would, is there anybody who would say today that women shouldn't have the right to vote? And so in order to get the world we want, we need to get active, and we need to force governments to act on our behalf. And history tells us that we can. It takes a while, and the suffragette movement took over 30 years, and I don't know how long it took for apartheid to be over, but it was more like 50, I don't know, lots of years. Civil rights took years and years, etc., etc. But it's, one of the most effective tools for making change is actually activism. Of course, this is where you acknowledge you don't necessarily recognize yourself in this picture. This might not be you. You might not feel ready to be a climate or environmental activist, and that's absolutely fine, which is why we have all these other things for you that you can get involved with. And these are the 5 things which we will go into a bit more detail about. You don't need to do all 5 of them. You don't need to do it in this order, although I think there is an internal logic to it. So I think you confront the facts, and if you're well versed with the facts, you will change your mindsets. And if you change your mindsets, you will change your behaviors, and you will want to then multiply your impact because you've already done your own behaviors. And then organizing for system change, in other words, activism, is perhaps the last step on the ladder. But if you feel like you want to go straight there, there's nothing to stop you from doing that. By the way, we're using the word organize instead of activism because we're bearing in mind who our audience is that we have in front of us. And these are people who are who don't look at themselves as activists. And so admonishing them to be activists may not work. It's not the best way to get them to activate them, ironically. So organizing sounds local, sounds doable, sounds non-controversial, sounds non-arrestable. So we prefer to use that in this talk for this particular audience. So let's go into a bit more detail about each of these. So confronting the facts, that's the simple bit. We've got a lot of data, good quality data. So everybody needs to be educated. You need to be a citizen climate scientist. We are this century, and our smartphones are designed to make us stop thinking. We're locked into doom scrolling. We're locked into YouTube shorts, and we need to make space in our heads to think, to stay curious, to read quality stuff, and refresh our knowledge from time to time. That is, a knowledgeable electorate is a much more powerful electorate. That's confronting the facts. The second bit is changing our mindsets. This is a quote from Game of Thrones, which I like. It talks about the pack. When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. I usually read out the quote and I stop. And I stop because I let that sink in. And then I ask, who is the pack? What's the pack that I need to belong to in order to survive? And there are 2 types of packs. our ancestors, tribal people, knew exactly that that in order for the individual to survive, the tribe needs to survive. So on the one hand, your pack is the people that you see around here, around you in the room today. It's your family, it's your friends, it's your neighbors, it's your local community. On the other hand, your pack also is now global. It's planet Earth, because CO2, the great leveler, doesn't know how to stay inside country borders. And so it's coming for all of us. We really are in it together, all of us. And so we have to keep both of those packs in mind, but the people we're going to actually work together with are the packs, is the pack that we have locally. Then, and I didn't do this today in the Pathways meeting, Ned, but I'm going to make an attempt of actually explaining this as I would do when I deliver the talk, because this is one of the trickiest concepts I think probably the trickiest concept in the talk, but it's super important. And as speakers, I am more than happy to tell you that we are struggling, really struggling to come up with an overarching wording for what goes onto this slide. So a lot depends on how you deliver this and how you explain it. So the explanation goes, we've got humans who have evolved on a village-sized community basis, which is, if you know Dunbar's number, we are developed to think together as a small community. And we're good at two things and we're bad at two things. We're good at reacting to dangers locally in our immediate surroundings when it happens to us in time. So we know we need to fight or flight. We need to, if it's right there in front of us, we can react to it. We are also good at feeling empathy for people and creatures around us immediately, close to us physically and in time. So if I see a child who is lost, or if I see a child who's fallen over, I'm going to pick them up, I'm going to dust them off, I'm going to check that they're okay and let them go on their way. And everybody would. I'll call an ambulance for an old lady if they need one, if they've collapsed on the street. And we're good at those things. So we're good at perceiving danger, and we're good at feeling empathy when it happens right next to us, physically or in time. We're bad at two things. We're bad at understanding dangers that are removed in space from us. So if there is I don't know, a volcanic eruption right in front of my house, I know exactly what I need to do. But if there's a flood in Indonesia, it's an abstract thing. I don't perceive that as dangerous. I also don't perceive the danger of time. If something is going to happen to me 20 years from now, I cannot viscerally perceive that danger. Just like if I'm walking down the street and a dangerous person comes up to me with a knife, I get a visceral feeling. You all know the feeling I'm talking about, right? It's a fuck feeling. Oh my God. You know it, you feel it. You do not feel that if I told you that in 20 years' time, your house is going to be on a floodplain and it's going to get flooded and you'll have to move out of your house. You will intellectually understand it, but you're not feeling the same visceral reaction. So we're bad at perceiving dangers that are far away from us, either geographically or in time. And we're also bad at perceiving and at feeling empathy for people and things that are far removed from us, either geographically or through time. However, we really need to get good at it because climate change and the ecological emergency are the first time ever in the history of humanity where the problem is global. It is far removed from us physically, and is also long term, and it's removed from us in time. Of course, it's already happening, but the worst impacts are yet to come in the more distant future. So we need to get good at this, and we need to develop this new power of long-range empathy and long-range risk perception, which we're bad at. So, and this is where I come up with an analogy, which is the analogy, and you're welcome to come up with a different one for your talk if you want to, but I use the analogy of the heart surgeon. So the heart surgeon, in the moment where they are operating on a child's heart, for example, they're focused on a piece of tissue. They don't connect with that child's plight, they don't connect with the fears and worries of the parents in the waiting room. They also don't connect with their own emotions in that moment, because all they're doing is a very precise, high-end, very important job of manipulating tissue. Once the tissue manipulation is done, they can then empathize with the child, be happy that the child survived, be happy for the parents, and get in touch with their own feelings as well. But if they had to care and worry about that child, that would be paralyzing. And just the same happens with climate activists. If a climate activist like us has to empathize with every single individual on the planet that is living today or will be living in the future, and if we had to worry about every single risk that is coming to us, we would be paralyzed to act. So we need to set our caring aside, but use it to take action. We must be the surgeons of this planet. We have to save the planet and ourselves with a single-minded purpose, knowing that we have empathy for it, but not feeling it at the time. That is a tricky one. And because the alternative is very quick burnout. And I know this because I've seen it, and so have you, especially I'm looking at you, Ned, of people who keep having to take breaks because they care too much in that moment. They care so much, and they try to do so much, and they're frustrated in their efforts, and they burn out. So you have to care, but you have to be able to set it to one side to take action. Is that reasonably clear? I usually ask that question from the audience as well when I explain it, to see if I've got nodding heads. I often do. So that's acting with care. And if you have any suggestions for what else to put on the slide, I will be very interested to hear it. Then this is the second time we're talking about health versus wealth, or maybe the third time when we talk about quality of life as opposed to standard of living. Standard of living is the consumption and owning of stuff. Quality of life is happiness. We need to look for personal health, community health, planetary health. And if you ask a person, this is the lead-in question of this slide, if you ask a person at the end of their lives, would you rather have more money or more health? What's the answer you're going to get?
Health.
It's always going to be health. So all we need to do is take that insight and apply it sooner. Apply it to everyone. So we need to change how we keep score, quality of life versus standard of living. And we need to change what we want from life. And sometimes I use an example from my own life here, which is my son, who there's a DJ that he likes a lot. His name is Alan Walker. And this DJ is a very popular figure with the kids. And he's a young guy, and he's very talented, I'm sure, and he's very rich now. And on his Wikipedia page, we can read about the fact that he, when he first got a bit more money, then he bought himself an Audi A8 sports car. And then the next year, he got more rich and he bought himself a Ferrari. And then the next year, he bought himself a Lamborghini. And that's his Wikipedia page, okay? And so this is the guy that young children are aspiring to. And we just have to be able to look at that and say, no, that is not what happiness is. That is not what health is. We need to aspire to different things. But I'm sure you have examples in your own life as well. So find something inspirational there to talk about. So now we go to, how am I doing for time? Okay, we will definitely finish at 7, by the way, guys, just to set your expectations. I will not overrun the session. I'm going to be able to do that. So now we have 2 slides. One of them is about climate change mitigation, and the second one is about climate change adaptation. Can I assume that you guys are familiar with these 2 terms and how they're different?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is about mitigation, so stopping or slowing down the rate of climate change. And this is a very controversial slide for Extinction Rebellion, because we say everywhere that we're not here to admonish people, to tell them what to do. We are here to get system change, to get citizens assembly, and get governments to take action on our behalf. However, having been delivering this talk for 6 years, I noticed that every single time we do this talk, the conversation at the end, not this talk, obviously heading for extinction, there will always invariably be someone in the audience who says, I hear you, I get the message. It's terrible, it's terrifying. What can I do? What can I do? And so we've made the decision that we're going to give people some degree of, it's not advice, but it's a list of things that other people are already doing. So we are not here to let the big polluters off the hook. We will always encourage people to join pressure groups that put pressure on the big polluters, not the individuals. However, if you do want to make changes in your life, you can. And here are some of the things that other people are already doing. Rather than saying to them, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do the other thing, we're just mentioning these things because people want to hear it. Stopping burning stuff, reducing or stopping flying. Again, and this is something that someone pointed out to us in the other meeting today, that not everybody has the means to fly. So whatever applies to you and people in the room, we need to adapt some of this stuff to the audience in front of us. But retrofitting homes costs money. Not everybody can afford that. Insulation, solar, battery storage. But changing our diets, reducing meat, particularly beef, but also other high carbon foods, is something everybody can look at. Reviewing your consumer choices is something everybody can look at. What kind of energy suppliers we use, the banks we use, the pension funds we use, the goods that we buy, the holidays we go on, how we travel. All of these things are, at least some of them will be applicable to the people in the room. And then on your way to net zero, you can also use ethical high quality carbon offsets. And I do that a lot. And this is a long conversation within XR as well, whether or not carbon offsets are the answer. No, they're not the answer. But if you have to take a flight, for example, is it better to do a carbon offset or is it better to just take the flight? I would argue if you do the right kind of carbon offset, then it is better to offset your emissions if you have had to fly. But it should only be used as a tool on our way to net zero rather than as a tool to carry on doing everything we continued. So it's not a business as usual tool. It's a tool on the way to net zero. And this is the mantra. I sometimes do this. I don't know. I am not brave enough to always do it, but I sometimes ask the audience to do a mantra because we don't need to be perfect to take action. And so the mantra goes, action before perfection, action before perfection, action before perfection. If we waited to be perfect before we are allowed to take action, we would never take action because nobody's ever perfect and everybody has a carbon footprint. Incidentally, this is also an argument I make on the street when I talk to people on the fringes of protests. And you expect me to be perfect before I'm allowed to protest and ask for better? I can't. And so I'm asking for better, even though I'm not perfect yet. This is the conversations we have. Oh, how did you come here? Did you come here by car? Oh, did you come here by train? What kind of train was it? Was it diesel? Oh, is that a plastic pair of shoes you're wearing? Oh, that's made of fossil fuels too. So how are you in the position to ask for or to protest? You're protesting against the very thing that you're wearing. Why don't you come here naked? Why don't you come here in your hemp clothing? And action before perfection. That's my mantra. So that's mitigation, and then adaptation is the next slide, which says change is coming. So we need to adapt to those new and more adverse circumstances. And adaptation is mainly going to happen in and around your home, in your local community, with your local pack. So it's all about resilience. And the question I ask is, what would you do if you had no electricity for 2 weeks? How would you behave in that situation? Are you resilient to that situation? If there's no electricity, there won't be any water because waterworks require electricity to pump the water. How are you going to survive that? COVID was a beautiful test of resilience. And did you know that the European Union now recommends every household to have stockpiles of 3 days of food in addition to everything they would normally buy. And my personal recommendation is actually 3 weeks. And I'm sat here in my office, and there's a shed right next to me, and there's 3 weeks worth of food in that shed, nicely stashed away. I hope I never ever have to touch it. And I also have a go bag, which is another thing, part of resilience. Is everybody familiar with what a go bag is?
Yeah.
Yep. No, Marilyn. It's a small bag. It's a small backpack which contains every essential you need for a family of 4 or 5 to survive. If you need to leave the house, it gives you your first 3 or 4 days of survival, including food, water purification tablets, a crank radio, flashlights, first aid kit, a number of other things, an emergency blanket or few. And so that's a go bag. And again, I've had it for many, many years now. I've never touched it. It sits in the attic and it's ready to go. Yes, Marilyn.
Oh. Did you say go bag?
It's a go bag. Yes, a bag which you can go.
Yeah. Okay.
If you have to leave your house immediately, you pick up the go bag and you leave, and you know that there's everything in there that you absolutely need to survive the next 4 days until you figure out what you do next. And I hope I never have to use it, but it's there. And it's all about the mindset. It's about reducing the length of the supply chain of your food, buying locally, growing your own food, getting involved in a community farm, allotments, guerrilla gardening, raised beds, whatever. I planted potatoes this year. I got 0 fucking crops. I had nothing. I planted 3 kilos of potatoes and I got 3 kilos of potatoes back, different ones, but I didn't gain any. I need to get good at potatoes because clearly that didn't work out for me, but I'm going to try again next year. And it's just the things that you can do locally, and working together with your local pack is resilience development. And this is audience participation time. So now you can go out and say, okay, talk to your neighbor about one aspect of your community life that you would like to see improved. What would you like to do? Let's discuss it amongst themselves, and let's get some ideas back in the plenary session. At which point, I almost invariably say, oh, that's a great idea. Here's the community that can actually achieve that. Go and do it. Activate. And I'm sure there'll be 2 or 3 fun ideas which make a difference, make a change, at least in community togetherness and radical empathy for one another in that same group. So that's audience participation about adaptation, resilience building. Then we come to impact multipliers. I need a drink. And impact multipliers, I start by talking about, okay, what's an impact of 1? That's my unit, my family, my house, my car, my travel, everything that surrounds me. That's an impact of 1. I can do all of my homework, or most of it. I'm not going to be perfect, but action before perfection. And an impact multiplier is anything that's outside of that. Me as a speaker talking to the audience, that's my impact multiplier for today. And I want to do as many of those as possible because it's multiplying my impact. I talk because I feel like that's where I can add value. Other people can do other things. And every single person in this room has impact multipliers. And in fact, I usually challenge people to come up to me if they don't think they know what that is. And within 30 seconds, we can figure out 3, 4, 5 different impact multipliers that they can make use of. So every impact multiplier matters. And we can all find ours. And here's a little list of all the different things that people can do to multiply their impacts, depending on who they are. Are you a parent? Are you a consumer? Are you good at organizing? Do you play music? Are you a civil servant? Are you a boss? Do you run a business? Do you have savings? Are you a farmer? Are you an engineer? Everybody can find something that they can do to improve and increase their impacts. And that leads into social change, because just like there are climate tipping points, there are also social tipping points, positive, social, technological tipping points. We are currently experiencing tipping points in the electric car, in the electrification of the grid, and in renewables. So a tipping point is coming. It's not coming fast enough, but typically only 20 to 30% of the population is sufficient to achieve a tipping point. To give you an example, once 20, 30% of people have a smartphone, suddenly everybody has a smartphone. And the spread of the car, the spread of the internet, the same sort of tipping points occurred. The reduction in smoking habits was another tipping point like that. And so and that's why individual action is so important, because we're building towards this 20 to 30%, and every little thing takes us closer to that. And imagine if everybody was doing the changes that we've been talking about, that tipping point would be even closer than we think. And in order to support that, it's really important to remember that we are the majority. And you know, the noisy minority talking about climate realism or climate denialism, what have you, they are noisy, but they are the minority by far. And study after study demonstrates the fact that we are the majority. The people who think climate change is happening, the people who are worried about it, and the people who want action are the majority. But there's a specific study which was recently conducted in 120 countries with 130,000 people. It is globally representative, showing that 89% of people recognize the climate emergency. Some countries, those numbers are lower, so that's an average score. But even in some of the worst places like the US, it's the majority. So there is some scientific evidence to support the idea that's one of the most important messages that we can deliver to people is that we are the majority, because they don't realize this because of the noisy minority making noises on the other side. So having said this, you can also say, listen, this is one of the most important messages to deliver to people. I've just delivered it to you. You now know you are the majority. So take that and use that, and you're welcome. Which leads us to the last point, which is about climate activism or organizing. Everybody, and this is one of the most impactful ways of precipitating change. The good news is you don't have to come up with it. It's there. There's a whole range of different organizations. The movement is up and running. It's thriving. It's waiting for you to join. You may think that joining a group is not for everyone, but there are so many different flavors of groups, from the completely vanilla to the very contentious and spicy. There's one for you. So find one that fits with your temperament and join it. We obviously hope that will be Extinction Rebellion. But if it's anything else, we will be happy with that too. And this is a point where we talk a bit about Extinction Rebellion. You might think we need to just do some myth busting and some expectation setting, I suppose, to say we are XR and we're known for roadblocks and gluing ourselves to roads and creating trouble. It is true that we did do this, and we did this to raise the alarm and raise the awareness and get people talking. But since 2023, we've changed direction, and we are no longer in the business of disrupting the general public. We are doing other things. We are still known for nonviolent direct action. That's the core of what we do, civil resistance. But we are also extremely engaged, as you can see, in local community building and talking to concerned citizens about what they can do. Local citizen-led work is super important in activism. The example is Sarah Finch in Horse Hill, Surrey, where they managed to get permission to drill for oil. I think it was oil. Was it oil? Yes. From being drilled. And that is a very important landmark case because it has a bearing on everything that the UK does. So it has a UK-wide implication because it's a Supreme Court decision that every new oil well needs to consider not just the carbon footprint of the operation itself, but also of the oil that they produce. So that being the case, a single case like this brought all the way to the Supreme Court will have a bearing on everything that happens in the UK. And whatever happens in the UK might well have a bearing on what happens globally. So you could argue that Sarah Finch has single-handedly, with a small group of very determined individuals, have managed to cause some kind of global impact. Just a small handful of people can have national or global consequences. And this is about XR and other activist organizations, and to say that everybody is welcome, because remember, these are people who don't consider themselves activists, or not yet anyway. They're not there on the adoption ladder. And we can say, look, there's a lot of different roles which are non-threatening, non-arrestable, fun to do, and that will help and support the movement. Some of them you can do from your own home. Some of them involve cooking or painting, artwork, music, the samba band, stewards that look after the people on the protests. And there's something for everyone. And this is where we mentioned the fact that you can get yourself signed up to a course on Introduction to XR, which will be a QR code at the back end of the deck. And you can also sign up for newsletters if you don't want to go as far as that. But this is a good moment to ask for some commitment, to think about what they want to do, how they want to get involved, what kind of role would they be able to see themselves in. Now we go to the 3 demands, which is straight out of Heading for Extinction. I don't always present this because depending on the audience and how ready they are for XR, this might be well placed to be shown in Intro to XR at a later point in their journey. But you can talk about it. You're very familiar with this, so I don't need to go into detail. What we do want to show is strength and say, look, there's an interactive map of all the local groups online where you can find your own group, or you can find your local actions. It's always up to date, and you can just explore and you can just show up. That's all the content, and we now come to the sign-off bits. Sign-off bits, first of all, and this is the slide where we recap on all the key concepts that have shown up throughout the talk. I encourage people to take a picture of this because it serves as a good reminder for everyone to know what they're taking away from the talk. The donut economics, system change, finding your pack, health before wealth, acting with care, action before perfection, impact multipliers, social tipping points, and the fact that we are the majority. The emotional message at the end of the talk, this is the rational message at the end of the talk. When we come to the emotional message at the end of the talk, where we say we still have a choice between the world we fear and the world we want. And the difference between the world we fear and the world we want is us. It's humans. So we need to take action to get the world we want and avoid the world we fear. Individual action, impactful, increasing our impact, and multiplying our impact, and acting as a group. So again, call to action. Think about what you want to do. How can you do individual personal behavior changes? How can you multiply your impact? What kind of group do you want to join and work together with? Because remember, when it comes to the climate emergency, winning slowly is the same as losing. There's a reason why it's called the emergency. So if you were going to take action, do it now. That's the talk. At the end, we are Extinction Rebellion. This talk was put together by people, humans of XR. Thank you for engaging with it. Remember, there's a world we can win. There's a reason to fight. Let's imagine that world and let's create that world. And here's a few QR codes. You can sign up to the newsletter. You can sign up to Intro at XR. And this is the evidence-based document it takes you to, which substantiates all the statements that we made throughout the talk. Thank you very much for listening. How are we feeling? It's a lot. I know it's a lot. It is a lot. And if you're going to deliver it, you need to make it your own. I'm going to stop talking, and we have 6 minutes in the call, and it's all yours, and you need to talk to me. Tell me, Ned.
Just fantastic. Thank you. Thank you to you and the team. I know how much work goes into just creating a slide, let alone writing a whole talk. So brilliant work, and I'm really excited about being able to deliver this.
Marilyn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to deliver it, but I can't immediately visualize who I will be delivering it to. In fact, what I visualize is delivering it to my group or people who are already converted just for their information. But it's good to be re-inspired a bit because I feel XR a little bit stuck, perhaps. You know, the fact that we're not being disruptive does leave a little bit of a void. You know, what distinguishes us from other groups? But that doesn't necessarily matter because we can do things with other groups, you know, like Friends of the Earth and so on. But that is still a question in my mind. But thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you very much. I think before I come to you, Ned, if I could just say, delivering this to your local group as a friendly, low risk first delivery is a great idea. And they will then help you to find your next set of people. Ned.
If it helps, Marilyn, what I have been saying recently is in terms of adaptation, what we've learned in Extinction Rebellion, and what we've skilled ourselves up and all the resources that we've got, and now we're primed for helping our communities to adapt. Because I think for me, that's I've always got one foot in each camp, that yes, we still need to mitigate, but we know what's coming. And if you know what's coming and you've got that knowledge and you have that passion to help your local community, that's my role now. That's part of my role now, is in particular going out into my local community and practicing participatory deliberative democracy, because I think that is what we have become aware of in Extinction Rebellion, creating the world we want and making sure that when we have climate breakdown more severely in this country, we can meet that with a peaceful, cooperative, and very democratic approach, as opposed to who's got the biggest gun. So yeah, that to me is where I'm heading with Extinction Rebellion myself.
Thank you. I need other comments. Christine?
Yeah. I'm a member, one of the ICs for Extinction Rebellion Buddhists, and we work with a lot of faith groups as well. And I'm thinking that that might be a possibility. I really like it, by the way. It's going to be much easier for me to deliver this than the science-based stuff. So yeah, and moving beyond the activists, I think that I've stayed involved with Friends of the Earth locally because it's more acceptable to the majority of people where I live than XR. So that's another place that I'm hoping to deliver the talks, really. I have some thoughts about your Act with Care slide.
Okay.
Because my take on it is that you're clearly a very rational, balanced individual, Bosch, but most people may be much more emotional than you, I imagine, in as they face their fears about climate change. And one of the things that I've been doing for a while now is offering more care to my colleagues. So self-compassion is the first place to start, because if you can look after yourself, then you're in a better place to look after other people. So some concepts around that, to recognize your strengths and the areas where you need more support. It's just a beginning, but I'm willing to think about it some more if it interests you.
It does. Yes, it does. Thank you, Christine. I would like to, Ned's got all of those, all of your contact details, so let's stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm sorry, I need to leave, so I wanted to put my hand up next. I wanted to say thank you very much, and I can see how much work's gone into that. And they're beautiful photographs, and it's really inspiring, and I'm just really appreciative of all of that. And it's funny, in back in 2019, there was like I was doing a talk a week. It was just crazy, and nobody wants talks anymore, and it's a really good point. I did at some point start reaching out to different groups, like I reached out to the Women's Institute and things. And you know what? Maybe they're ready. Maybe we should be reaching out to all those people again. Let's see what comes.
I
But
think so.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just, before you leave, just very briefly say, I personally am terrible at organizing, so I think it's a separate skill, and if you feel the same way, then I'd encourage you to recruit someone that will support your speaking with organizing. You can't be expected to do both the speaking and be ready and be available as well as the organizing, and there has to be someone else who can do that for you or with you.
Really interesting thought. Thank you.
And John,
Wonderful.
and thank you, Carol. If you need to go, lovely to see you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye.
John.
Yeah, yeah. Where have I gone? Oh yeah. Yes, I think it's very, very good. I mean, I feel this is really a first impression. For me, it's now necessary to look at the talk, try and sort of really pick up the flow of ideas, see how I can sort of internalize it and make it my own, as it were. But it really feels very, very promising to me. I like the way that it's kind of really expressing the sort of evolution in Extinction Rebellion and what Extinction Rebellion is now, or is looking like now, as opposed to a few years ago. So yeah, thanks a lot. I think it's great. And yeah.
Thank you. Yes, it blends in nicely with current XR strategy of community building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terry, did you want to say something? You were wavy hands just a while ago.
Sure, just a passing word about it's different in the US.
Oh, I bet.
For somehow, well, I think we can point the fingers at why, but the UK has managed, and it's a great thing, you've managed to maintain a kind of communal rapport at very local and up to regional levels. You've managed to keep that kind of alive and well. That's not happening in the US. I know maybe 4 people who live around me, and we've been living here for 4 years. And we just don't have conversations because every conversation immediately starts circling the drain into political differences, religious differences. I mean, we are so divided as a people these days in the US that I've tried to get XR going here for 5 years. No luck. Now, there are some good chapters. There's Washington, there's New York, there's some in the Pacific Northwest. There have been some in Atlanta and Miami, but they're a little bit dubious. XRUS turns out, this is just my opinion, turned out to be an AstroTurf organization, if you know what that is. Looks like grassroots, but when you pick it up, it ain't grassroots. It's intelligence community, corporate or government. That's just my opinion. But anyway, all of that to say, this was a really good update of the talk. It was science heavy previously, but that was needed at the time. And different speakers had different ways to kind of, I won't say dumb it down, but to make it more accessible without too much jargon. But it's good to have one that isn't as dependent on that as the first version was. So it's a great job, well done.
Thank you.
Don't know what I can do with it in this environment. And I live in West Central Florida, so it's Ron DeSantis and Trump. And that's my world, socially and politically. So I don't know what I can do with it, but I've made a few connections with a handful of people. And there is an Occupy Florida movement here.
There we go.
Florida Occupy Florida. That's that's the right mindset. So I'm making connections and putting feelers out and getting connected to local groups as best I can. And this may come in handy in those contexts. So I appreciate you putting it together and making it available. Sorry I was late.
That's all right. You'll get to see the video of the beginning. And yeah, community building it sounds like that's your job, to find your pack. That is your first job. And then everything else follows from that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, we are kind of at time. Any checkouts, any thoughts before we go? And I want to hand back to Ned, who is the formal head of the session. But John, would you like to say something? Did you?
No, not really.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question? What is the next step in terms of receiving the talk?
Yeah. So you will all get the slides. There is a link from where to download. In fact, Ned, you can spread that. Yes. Yeah. Perfect. And for everybody who wants to get some hands-on experience in delivering it, I will be doing Richard for yourself, but anybody else is welcome as well. Some speaker training where you deliver the talk to an audience and we feed back to you, to each other, basically. That's the next step. But other than that, if you're happy enough, Marilyn, you're welcome to start delivering the talk as is. Thank you. Ned?
Yeah, don't worry, we'll be in touch after this. We've got your contact email addresses, so we'll make sure that you get everything you need. And also, if you want to be in a speakers chat group so that you can support each other, get updates, information about when Bosch is going to be delivering training, that sort of thing, you've got two options. You've got Telegram chat. There's a group on there. And if you're a Mattermost user, it's bridged to a Mattermost channel. So you can be at either end, depending on what your preference is. And again, I'll send the information about that in the follow-up email.
Amazing. Thank you all. Take care. Be good.
Thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.